Hi there. It's been a really big week in the practices because this is the week that we've started to get vaccinations for COVID, but it's also the week that we've had yet another change to how we organise ourselves in terms of starting to do what's called lateral flow testing, which is the kind of regular self-testing to see if we are asymptomatic carriers of COVID. And it's got me thinking a little bit about how things have been over the last kind of 9 months and what that might mean and what the takeaway messages for that might be beyond COVID, and really thinking about how change is managed. And as a point of reference, there have been 64 at the time of recording, maybe more now, 64 changes to the COVID regulations from our dear government since we started in the UK. And they are getting increasingly poorly adhered to for all sorts of reasons, not least of all because the reason for those changes is getting lost, and the messaging and the consistency around those changes is coming way too late after the event. And it goes back to those fundamental tenets of change management, in that to get effective change management, you need to get the people who you want to change to understand the reasons why you want to change, what's in it for them, and then the messaging and the rules and the guidance around that change needs to be really clear and really consistent. And that's where we have failed in the UK to really get that working well, because not only have we lost the justification for the changes, or the inconsistency around the messaging has overpowered the reasons for those changes, which a lot of the time have been entirely reasonable and legitimate, but because there have been mixed messages, because there's been inconsistency, because the leaders have demonstrably not been adhering to the regulations or the guidance themselves, the adherence amongst the population who should be changing to follow those has faded away. And to extend that into what we do beyond COVID, when we're looking at how we change within our organisations and how I've tried to make change happen within my organisation, what I've realised is that if I haven't at the very outset given people a reason to change that actually, let's be honest, is in their interests, in other words, it's going to make them have an easier time, it's going to make their day-to-day job more straightforward, it's going to make them more money, it's going to make them happier, it's going to improve their work-life balance, whatever it might be, but if I haven't given that reason, change is doomed from the outset. But perhaps even more importantly, if I haven't stuck to the change myself, and if those messages have not been consistent around that change, then it is doomed to failure. So the lesson that we can learn from the COVID lockdowns and regulations and all that kind of stuff, the 64 changes, is that as we go about making change, we have to be justified and justifiable, and we have to be consistent and empathetic in our messaging to our teams. And if the change has to change, then we need to manage that incredibly carefully. Because if we keep flip-flopping from one thing to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, every time we do that, we lose engagement, we lose inertia, and eventually we will lose the ability to generate that change with the team. Our agency will have gone. So this is really my attempt to generate some positive lessons out of this whole horror that we've lived with over the last 9 months. And I think this is a really important one that certainly echoes with my experiences working within the practices. So I hope it's useful. I hope it means something to you as you reflect on your daily work. But until next time, stay well, stay safe, take care.